Please join us in our chalice lighting words. They're found in your order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Morning. I have been serving at a hospital in Buffalo as part of a course called Clinical Pastoral Education. It's part of my ministerial formation. My job is to meet patients where they are, giving them the time or the solace they need and want. Sally needed some company. Because of her injuries and her illness, Sally was impatient and frustrated. Sally was bored and tired of sitting in a hospital robe all day. Sally repeated her complaints in a loop that became familiar as I sat with her and tried to affirm all that was heavy in her heart. Eventually, I was due back at the office. It was time for me to go. And I said to Sally, as I often say to patients, the blessings of love and life to you. And Sally began to cry. Oh dear, I said, do you want me to stay with you, Sally? And she said, no. It's just that those words mean the world to me. That's how I feel about church. That's how I feel about being here with you. It means the world to me. Sometimes, lots of times, I am impatient and frustrated. Sometimes I am bored, dwelling on the challenges of life more than on the joys. Days get repetitive and I long for a break from the monotony. But fellowship and companionship, the blessings of love and life, this is what it means to be in church for me. Focusing on what binds us and unites us rather than on what divides us. That's church. Focusing on the risky and worthy emotion of love. That's church. This is what can bring me to tears. This is what moves my spirit to go on, to persist through the difficulty, the treachery, the disappointments of living. Blessings of love and life. To me, to you, to all of us. May it be so. Took more than a few Russian literature classes. I loved those thick, meaty novels by Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. These master writers presented the rich world of pre-revolutionary Russia in all of its stratified and boisterous glory. It was full of dash and panache, full of grit and turmoil. But if truth be told, I loved my teacher better than I loved any of those novels. She was smart elegant, confident, warm, and generous. Everything I aspired to be. And they didn't have a class for that. Valentina Barsom was her name, and she regularly invited her small classes into her home, a house splendid with real oil paintings and oriental carpets and large vases of exotic cut flowers. We sat awestruck on her low divans while she flipped open elaborate metal boxes full of long, slender cigarettes just for us. Help yourself. Now, don't judge me. It was the early 80s, and I was trying to be a grown-up and sophisticated, so I was smoking like a chimney. Anyway, Valentina prepared strong black tea in her antique samovar, and we sipped out of ruby glass cups. Days after such a visit, we were still chattering about it, achingly pleased but curious about why she bothered with the dopey girls we actually were, in our torn jeans and bandanas, our nails bitten and lips chapped, hopelessly dim-witted about Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. I remember once gushing to Dr. Barsom with much enthusiasm about how I preferred Tolstoy to Dostoevsky. My rationale was, Tolstoy just loves humanity so much. He wants to upset the social structure that locks people into these empty lives of manners and facades. And she looked at me quizzically, tilting her head just a little. And she said, yes, it's true. I won't try the Russian accent. Yes, it's true that Tolstoy loved humanity in general. But Dostoevsky loves particular people very specifically. Way back when I was a young student, struggling to be smart, I wanted to understand what she meant. Dr. Barsom's comment reminds me a lot of why our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, is actually a lot harder to affirm and promote than one might think. In general, it makes perfect sense. It is not all that challenging to hold, in general, that every person is inherently, intrinsically, by virtue of being a human being, worthy and dignified, right? William Blake's poem, Infant Joy, presents one version of this. 2-day-old infants can't actually speak, right? But when babies, the very emblem of new life and possibility, are welcomed, we adults reflect the love we experience internally back to the infants in reciprocal fashion. We feel joy, and so we project that joy like an echo or a mirror onto the infants, and the relationship rebounds. That is ideal, isn't it? Our own inherent worth and dignity recreates in another as we behold that other. In general, it's not all that difficult to affirm and promote our first principle, to see infant joys everywhere, the norm. But specifically, for individuals or members of certain social identities, well, we're not always so sure. Try this. Think of a current presidential candidate. Okay? Hold that image in your mind. Dignified, you say? A worthy individual? Now, I'm not exactly sure which presidential candidate you are thinking about right now, but I'm positive that there is some doubt floating around us as to the worth and dignity of the one you have pictured. If we click around our social media, any of us might find language in comment sections that resonates with that of the poison tree. Once the enemy is determined, anger and wrath, all manner of bad feelings, are cultivated, and death is what flourishes. If we can't kill that crook or that liar, literally, and even some supporters, we do it figuratively in some of the vilest language imaginable. Needless to say, such language does not affirm and promote human worth and dignity. And we could go on, I think, pretty easily, couldn't we? We can all think of individual folks we know who seem somehow lesser. Now, I'm not saying we actually like to have this feeling or that we like to acknowledge it. I certainly don't. But maybe you know what I'm talking about. There's that person whose views you simply cannot abide. That person who acts like some kind of a train wreck. There's that person who just can't ever kick his addiction, who can't ever seem to get her act together. We can all search our hearts and minds for that person for whom the words worth and dignity seem a big stretch, requiring a lot of mental gymnastics in order to affirm and promote by means of our first principle. And even if you are way more enlightened than I am, and you never have ungenerous thoughts about another person, there might be some groups or some identities of people whose inherent worth and dignity you question. I serve a group we can call ex-offenders. We could also call this group ex-convicts or even criminals. Or more specifically, we can call them murderers or drunks or addicts or thieves or perverts. At times, I have been hard-pressed during my service to hold some of these men as inherently worthy and dignified. All of them. They have ruined lives, including their own. They have beaten other men to death for throwing the wrong look. They have killed families with their trucks while driving drunk. They have struck down and stolen from frail elderly for a single balloon of heroin. They have violated children. For these and other crimes, even staunch advocates against the death penalty, people like me, might pause and think, well, maybe that one shouldn't live anymore. In general, I long for prison reform and sentencing that is restorative and curative rather than punitive. Specifically, when it comes to a particular person, I'm not always so sure. In one of the buildings where I serve, first a priest and years later a nun were killed by the very destitute men the priest and the nun were trying to nurture. There are days when I question if I'm strong enough to go inside that building. I have taught for many years at a Catholic college in Buffalo, and community service is strongly encouraged. Most of our students come to us familiar with it. And I would often ask our students about their service experiences, and they would tell me how they were helping those who had less. They had less food, less shelter, less clothing, less comfort than the students themselves had. And they would tell me how it made them feel good to help, how it made them grateful for what they have. In moments like that, I believe that those students were tapping into, and very importantly, their own sense of inherent worth and dignity. And I would encourage them to keep helping people and to keep having that feeling. Now, when we were in class and we had gotten ourselves all warm in the glow of collective goodness, because we had all served someone somewhere, I would ask them about public transportation, about riding the subway or the bus. Few of them ever did that. Most of them had their own cars. And in the city, I know you all have your own cars out in the country, but in the city, we don't always need them. But there are those Friday night trips to the local bar scene where it is best to use public transportation. Right? We don't really want them on the roads. And so I would ask them how they felt sitting next to the guy whose filthy clothes reeked of urine and unwashed body. the guy who jibber-jabbered untranslatable words punctuated by random punches into the air, who glowered at them in ways that seemed menacing or unhinged. And then the air goes out of the room, gets overly quiet, and mentally we have all moved to the other end of the subway car. We are not basking in the glow of goodness and service any longer. Now, I set up those students for that burst bubble. You probably figured that out. I wanted to help them recognize that in helping those with less, they were meeting their own needs rather than serving the needs of others. And this is a crucial realization for them. I want students to see that such actions can demonstrate that they themselves are inherently worthy and dignified. They are doing something important in the world by going outside of their comfort zones and helping those with less, even when less is conceived as a comparison with themselves. The students should feel good about themselves. But feeling good is not an end in itself. Rather, it can be a way to see the goodness, the inherent worth and dignity of others besides themselves. It can be a way to see that those who have less also have more. Some things that the students don't have and might never have. Levels of determination and stamina unimaginable to people whose meals are always on demand since they have the dollars in hand to pay for them. Levels of ingenuity and resilience unfathomed by people who have never had to search for a safe place to sleep at night. Levels of devotion and adaptability incredible to people whose desire for companionship is always immediately available through a simple handheld device. Rather, feeling good about themselves can even show the way to understanding that those of us who are black and brown worry more, and legitimately so, that their sons and fathers might be brutalized or killed by those paid to enforce the law. A worry that fewer white people ever need to experience. It's not just a way to understand with our intellects and rationality. It's a way to really feel with our hearts and our spirits. So it is hard to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person in specific terms for specific individuals or specific identities. Now, I have a little picture I want to show you, and I look forward to the day where we have some kind of audio visual, right? And then this will not be your audio visual. Let's see if I can get it to stand up. I hope you can see it. Okay, clearly the environment shaped this tree, right? The wind bending it into this lovely shape or crooked shape, depending on your point of view. So too it is with us. We are shaped by our environments, our families, our places in the social order, the tenor of the times we grow up in, the words about ourselves and others that we have inherited. All of these and more shape our values and our senses of ourself as valuable. All of these and more shape where we find the inherent dignity and worth that we want to promote with that first principle. So I want you to hear words from the Catholic theologian Karl Rahner from his book on prayer that he published in 1958. In a fresh affirmation of faith and love, the soul must descend deeply into the knowledge of its own worthlessness, for only by doing so can it find God. It is not despite the fact of our nothingness that we find God, but because of our realization that we are as nothing in his sight, and that the world is dust and ashes, except as a means of loving and serving him. Now, my friends, I am wounded by these words. I feel harmed by these words. These are the words of original sin, of inherent death and undignified life. And I know that the view of the human spirit projected by these words was much more the typical view when I was growing up from a child to an adult. This is what I heard as a child. And I know that words like this are the ones that some churches still use to define humanity in general and specific individuals in particular. Worthlessness, nothingness, dust and ashes. Friends, these are not our Unitarian Universalist words. This is not the language that shapes our being and our relationships as we go through our lives. I feel so grateful that our faith tradition spares us this language of desolation and despair. Now, I cherry-picked Karl Rahner, so there's probably way more to him than I am acknowledging here. But I feel that we Unitarian Universalists are lucky beyond measure to have our first principle, to which to aspire, this value to reach for and strive toward. We are fortunate because the language matters. The way we talk about things and about each other creates the reality that we inhabit. If we speak about love and affinity, we create the infant joy. If we speak about anger and hatred, we create the poison tree. If we speak of inherent worth and dignity, the Dr. Barsams of the world love the graceless students invited home. The volunteers with ex-offenders love each man in his effort to be valued and to be whole. These helpful students can learn to love the smelly, scary guy in need of a bath and a haircut, in need of a home in which to feel safe. At the memorial service for the police officers killed in Dallas, President Obama said this: "In the end, it's not about finding policies that work. It's about forging consensus and fighting cynicism and finding the way to make change. Can we do this?" He invites us. Can we find the character as Americans to open our hearts to each other? Can we see in each other a common humanity and a shared dignity, and recognize how our different experiences have shaped us? It doesn't make anybody perfectly good or perfectly bad. It just makes us human. I'm going to miss President Obama. These are words that foster inherent worth and dignity in general and specifically. We are all simply humans doing our best and able to do better. We each have value, and so we can tap into the values that unveil the value in others. We have to be sure of our own worth and dignity so that we can better see it in others. We have to, in the words of W.H. Auden, love our crooked neighbors with our crooked hearts. We each want our true colors to shine through. We want others to see them. The first principle makes it our obligation to find those true colors in each person, each identity group with whom we share this earth, our home. There's a beautiful image. So friends, foster in yourselves the understanding that you are worthy, you are full of dignity. Foster in yourself the sense that all others are like you in that respect. Begin with that ideal. Begin each day with the affirmation and promotion of the inherent worth and dignity of each person, including yourself. Say the words that make it true and be part of the forces that bring that ideal into reality. Each day, every day. May it be so.
It's hard to take courage in a world full of people. Lose sight of it all, and in the darkness make you feel so small. But I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow. Show me a smile then, don't be unhappy, can't remember when I saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy, if taking all you can bear, you call me up, you know I'll be right there. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow.
Please join us in the words to extinguish our chalice. Yes, take someone's hand. Let no hand go unclasped. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go and foster worth and dignity.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor Daniel Brigham.